I'm Miranda Hitchcock. I'm one of the co-founders of Every Dog Behavior and Training. We are a nonprofit here in Austin, and we are dedicated to making sure that everyone in our entire community has access to professional dog training and behavior support. We know that historically not everyone has been able to access it, and we think that everyone should have it. So we do a whole bunch of things in the community. We do offer both free and paid training services. So we do behavior consults. We're hoping to start doing puppy classes early next year. We do private stuff. We're hosting a Fearful Dogs group every other week. If you have a fearful dog and would like some extra moral support and training support, we have that going on. And we also do these webinars. So about every 2 weeks, we have a webinar from a different local trainer talking about a whole variety of different topics. And we also do a monthly webinar for new dogs that just goes over everything you kind of need to know if you have a new dog in your house. So tons of free offerings. If you're not following us on Facebook and Instagram yet, please do. If you really like what you heard today, we would love it if you wrote us a review on Facebook or on Google. And please let your friends know that we're here. We're brand new. We opened in February, right before COVID hit. But we want to make sure that as many people as possible get access to the support that we need, or the support that they need. And so we're working with a lot of our awesome local trainers to make sure that that happens. So without further ado, Margaret Johnson, I think at least a few of you already know very well, but we're really excited to have her tonight. And so she's getting her screen up, and then I will have her introduce herself and start the presentation about canine senses. If you have any questions during the presentation, feel free to just type them into the chat box, and we'll make sure that we go over all questions at the end. But that way, if we just all keep ourselves muted, then we can all listen to Margaret as we go. Margaret, you ready?
Hi, everyone. Thank you for being here and for your patience. I'm a dog trainer and behavior consultant here in town. And I have just always been fascinated by dogs. And, you know, we just live with dogs more intimately than we do any other species. And it seems like thousands of years ago, somehow humans and dogs figured out a way to make this mutually beneficial relationship work together. And so I've always kind of been interested in how did that come about? And I think a lot of it has to do with our senses and how we interpret the world. And even though we all have the same 5 senses, you know, sight, sound, touch, feel, and taste, we look at things a little bit differently. So before I go into all the differences, I just want to say I'm not a veterinarian. I'm not a biologist. I'm just somebody that has lived with dogs all but 5 years of my life. I'm not going to tell you how many years that is. And I've been working with dogs now for 23 years. And so I just wanted to figure out a way to understand them. And I am a science geek, so I've done my best to fact check everything you're going to see tonight and make sure it's up to date, but science doesn't stay still. So there may be newer studies, and if there are and you know of them, please let me know about them. So let's talk about dogs. Whoops, boy, this goes fast. Whee, look at all the fun things you're going to see. Okay. How many times has anyone said to their dog, there's nothing there? I hear my students say it all the time, and I hear myself say it all the time. Not all the time, but a lot of the times. But, you know, there usually is something there. I thought we would start with vision because, good Lord. I thought we'd start with vision because that is our primary sense. We humans see things, see the world through our eyes. But dogs, human babies are even born able to see. They can see before they're born. Puppies, baby puppies are born with their eyes closed. This is the litter of my dog Bonnie. I don't know if she's in this picture, but this is her litter at 1 day old. Puppy eyes don't open till they're about 10 to 14 days old. And even then, their vision is not terribly great. And although our design, the eye design is similar, it's different in some ways. So, oh man, sorry y'all. So this is our human eye. And it differs somewhat from how dogs and wolves and canids see things, but I just want you to kind of look at this and remember what this human eye looks like. So the wolf eye is much different. Descending from wolves, dogs by nature are more active during the day, during dusk and dawn, when the light is dimmer, but that's when prey is more active. And so they need to be really aware of and able to see the prey, and they need to be able to sense movement very, very well. And their eyes allow them to do that. We are hunter-gatherers, we work in the day, so we need to be able to see color, we need to be able to see really fine, fine detail. And that's what that other eye does, that the dog eye doesn't do so well. So dogs have a larger cornea. You can see here, if you remember the human eye, there is a lot of white, but in a dog eye, you don't usually see a lot of white in the eyes. Their pupils are really, really big. They have more rods in their eyes than we do, and the rods are what detect movement, and they also see black and white. So that allows dogs to see in low light, and it allows them to see more shades of gray than we see. There's a lot of different shades of gray. We don't see them as much as they do. So there's also something called the tapetum luticum, which I think sounds like a Harry Potter spell, but this is a reflective place in the back of the eye that brings in more light. And that is when you're walking with your dog at night and they turn and you get these glowing eyes, that is what has happened. The light has come into that reflective surface and is being reflected back out to you. So what colors do dogs see? We have more cones than they do, and the cones are what give you color vision. Now, humans have 3 cones. We have red, yellow, and blue, which lets us see the entire color spectrum. So we can see everything here. Dogs only have 2 cones, yellow and blue. Also, colorblind people also only have 2 cones, yellow and blue. So their vision, their color vision is much more limited. This is more what a dog can see. So anything that's in the red to green spectrum comes out as a kind of a shade of yellow. So if you have a red ball that you throw on the green grass, this is what it looks like for your dog. So I don't know what company wants you to buy a blue ball, but it was a really good picture of how dogs see things differently. How we see is different with dogs and people. Humans have normal vision is 20/20. For dogs, it's 20/75, which means something that we can see really clearly at 75 feet away, they can only see as clearly as at 20 feet away. But even though they can't, because they have those rod cells, they can detect more movement at a farther distance. This is my dogs, Bonnie and Jet. Bonnie's on the left and Jet's on the right. And they are looking at my neighbor's house that's about half a mile away, maybe a quarter mile away. And since this picture was taken, my neighbors have put a goat pen right in between their house and my property. And one night, Bonnie and Jet and I were walking, and it was twilight, and we came around this side, and they just dead looked like that. They were more toward Bonnie's side, but they were just staring. And I just kind of assumed that they were looking at the goats because the goats were closer. And then I realized they're not looking at the goats. They were looking to the side of the goats. So I went over and I squatted down and squinted and tried. And it's like, what are you seeing? I know you see something. This right here is their trash can, their trash bin. And on top of it was a chicken moving. I would never have seen that chicken. I would never have noticed it. I would have just been going, there's nothing there. But when I actually got down and tried to see what they were seeing, it was like, son of a gun, there's a chicken there. Oh my God. So that just really hit home to me of they really can see so differently. The world must be just visually so different for them. Now, depth perception and binocular vision is where we excel. This isn't really binocular vision. I just didn't have a really good slide, and it's a pretty picture of Bonnie, so I thought I'd put it in there. Humans can have a wider range of binocular vision. We can see up close. We have a small area in our brain with a set of pure cones. And that is really critical. It's called a fovea. It's really critical for seeing close-up vision, for reading, and dogs don't have a fovea. So if you want to get an idea of what it's like not to have a fovea, put your finger about 6 inches in front of your nose and see if you can, and now read what's on the screen. Take your finger away and then bring it back and see how it changes the way you see it. Are y'all seeing difference? Usually what you'll see is you'll see 2 fingers instead of your 1 finger in front of you. Should be about 6 inches away. So dogs' eyes are set farther apart than ours. Binocular vision, really close set eyes, is great for binocular vision, not so great for peripheral vision. Dogs, we have a peripheral vision about 180, so where you can look either way. Dogs have a peripheral vision of about 240 to 270, which means they can see things, they can perceive things that are behind them, even when they're looking straight ahead. So this is why sometimes it's really hard to get their attention. You think they're looking at something, they're like, yeah, I see that thing over there. So sometimes, oh, that's what I was going to say. Thank you, Jet. So one of the ways you can kind of test how good your dog's binocular vision is versus their peripheral vision is if you throw a treat to your dog and have them see if they can catch it. If you throw it right at their nose, they're going to have a harder time than if you toss it just to the side of their face. So give that a try when you have your dog and your treats and see front on, is it harder, or just to the side, are they able to see it because of that peripheral vision? Now, my mother always said she had eyes in the back of her head. Dogs kind of do. They have this third eyelid that they have their top eyelid and their bottom eyelid like we do, but they have this third eyelid that is a membrane that comes across their cornea and wipes it like a windshield wiper to clean it and protect it. Some dogs, you can see it more than others. You probably, if you've ever put eye drops in your dog's eyes and their eyes roll back in their head like they're all you can see is white, that's this membrane coming across their eye. Or sometimes when dogs are dreaming or asleep, their eyelids will be open, but they'll look like they just have this white eye. That's that third eyelid showing up. So let's see. So next I thought we'd talk about olfaction, about noses and how dogs smell. What I should have done is put a slide of Jet with the porcupine quills in his nose, which he had 2 weeks ago, because that would have been a really good example of a nose that got itself into trouble. So imagine that a confetti bomb went off in your yard, and every single piece of confetti was a text message. And some are more interesting than others, but you want to read them all. That is what it's like in terms of scent for dogs. So every one of those pieces of confetti represents a scent. It's a scent text message. And that's what your dog is dealing with when they are out in the world. It's really, it's got to be incredibly overwhelming. We're back to, that's Bonnie's mama. Again, I'm not sure which one she is. If I could see their toes, I could tell you because she had little white toes. But the sense of smell is the most important sense for dogs. It is of the three senses, it is the one sense that they are born with. It's how they find mama in the very beginning of their life, before their ears open, before their eyes open. So scent is processed for both of us we'll look at them for a while because it's cuter. Scent is processed pretty much in the same way for dogs as it is for us. We breathe something in, the signals go to our brains, which process the information, figure out what it is. But the way dogs and human brain noses function is very different. So dogs can detect odors in parts per trillion, which is like finding one dirty sock in the middle of 2 million socks. They their sense of smell is 10,000 to 100,000 times better than ours, depending on the breed. If the dogs have longer noses, longer and bigger noses, they typically can have more scent, get more scents. So to wrap your brain, our visual brain, around that, the analogy would be if a dog could smell 10,000 times better than us, what they could see 3 miles away, we would only be able to see at about 1/3 of a mile. So it's way, way exponentially better. And there are 2 reasons that happens. And one is that the part of the brain dedicated to scent in dogs has these 3 million olfactory receptors. And then the other part is we only have about 6 million. So, so that's part of it. The next part is just how the structure of the dog's nose. So this part of the dog's nose, this hairless part, has all these little ridges and dimples, and lots of times it's wet. The moisture, there's moisture on it. That plus this little nostril is what makes up what's called a nose print. And the nose print of each dog is thought to be as individual as fingerprints are to us. So every dog has a nose and nose print that looks very different. They can operate these nostrils independently. The nostrils can be working in different directions, and their nostrils can even determine which scent came in which nostril. Now, all that is really helpful if you need to smell to identify prey and find prey and be able to find where it is and get it. So have you ever been walking with your dog and all of a sudden they stop, turn around and go back where you just were and start sniffing, and they sniff for like a long time? Well, if dogs find something particularly interesting, they will go back to that same spot over and over again. This is one of two spots on my property that whenever we're going for a walk, Bonnie stops and sniffs. And that's even if we're doing laps around the property. It's like we were just here. I don't think anything else has been there, but it probably has. But that's, I would love to know what she smells. But that is something that you will find that dogs do. It's our nose has two, we have our two nostrils, and air goes in and out one way. There's one exit, one entrance, in and out, in and out. We have a very small area where our scent receptor is, but as soon as we blow air out, that scent is gone. For dogs, they have that fold of the nose, and when air comes in, it gets separated. And most of it goes down to their lungs for respiration, but about 12% of it goes up into their olfactory center. I want to make sure I'm on track here and not getting off track, because my people know that I get off track very easily. So they're running two operating systems at the same time. The olfactory cells are way back here. And again, they've got between about 125 and 300 million scent receptors. Dachshunds are at the low end with about 125 million. Bloodhounds are up at the top end with about 300 million scent receptors. And again, we only have 5 to 6 million. And so let's see. So air comes in this part of the dog's nose, and then it comes out this way. So dogs can be bringing new scents in and holding on to new scents while they're breathing other stuff out. This is what allows them to sniff pretty much continuously. And if you've ever tried to sniff like a dog, it's impossible. I mean, you do it for 3 seconds and then you're hyperventilating. But because they can breathe in and out at the same time, they are able to do this. Now, another thing in their secondary system that they have that we don't have is this called the vemeronasal organ. It's this little tiny thing right here. And it's really super sensitive and important for dogs because it processes pheromones. And when it does, there's a special nerve that takes those scents, those particular scents, up to a part of the dog's brain. And those scents, the pheromones, are processed in the emotional part of the brain. Every other scent is processed in a different part of the brain. So the brain, they separate those out. Now, pheromones are signatures. They're kind of like the social media for dogs. Pheromones are secreted through urine and other bodily secretions. But since most dogs don't have a lot of other bodily secretions, they don't sweat, they pant some, most of the chemical identity that they share is through their through the genital regions, which is why dogs like to sniff us so much. But they can tell from pheromones what a dog has eaten, how old a dog is, their emotional state, their social state, their reproductive state. They just get a whole lot of information from these pheromones. And much as you might try to cover up your individual personal body scent with soap or shampoo, your dog still can smell who you really are. And I was thinking about that today. I was thinking about how I wonder if dogs tend to sniff people's genitals more often if we shower than if we don't. Whether if that's what it is, that they can't get a sense of our pheromones anywhere else because we are all covered up with this perfumey stuff. So I don't know. I'm going to find that out. But anyway, if your dog is embarrassingly sniffing you in public, or worse, your friends or family, or really embarrassing to me one time was a client that my dogs would not stop sniffing. It's really just their way of saying, hey, how's your day? I'd like to get to know you better. So that's try to give them a little bit of break. So now we're going to talk about hearing. And hearing, like with vision, dogs, human babies can see, can hear even before they're born. Puppies don't hear. You can see how flat their little ears are against their head. Their ears don't open until about 3 weeks. And then it's not fully developed until about 7 weeks, which I was thinking about that and was thinking about early adoptions. If you adopt a puppy or you're adopting out a puppy before they hit 7 weeks, was they're going to a new home and their hearing is developing. So that could be something to really think about if you're doing an early adoption. The big difference is in ears. There's not so much going on in the middle, in the inner and middle part of the ear, but it's the outer ears where the big difference is. Now, our ears are directly on the side of our head. We only have 6 muscles, so most people can't wiggle their ears. Dogs, obviously, have their ears on the top of their heads. They have 18 muscles versus our 6, so they have 3 times as many muscles, which means they can rotate, they can tilt the ears. All of this really helps to find the things that they need to find. Have you ever been with your dog when they're looking straight ahead, like Bonnie and Jet were at my neighbor's house, and then all of a sudden an ear turned? If you've got a floppy-eared dog, it's not as easy to see that. It's really easy to see with my German Shepherds with their big satellite dish ears. So they can move independently. They can locate better. They can locate the source of a sound within 6/100ths of a second. But though they may know where it is, they may not know exactly what it is. So they have that bark first and ask questions later kind of philosophy. We tend to be better at identifying what a specific sound is. So they can also really filter sounds very well. They can turn things, they can really focus on one sound and totally block out other sounds that aren't important to them. So that's why your dog can be in a dead sleep and then leap up the second they hear a treat bag rattle. So, but they can filter out anything that they don't want or need to hear. I know what you're thinking. I thought that too. You're thinking, I know people who have that kind of selective hearing. You're not telling me that it's just dogs that do that. But here's the difference. With dogs, it's an actual physical attribute. With humans, I think it's a little more voluntary, just saying. So the look of the ears is what is very different. And there's our dog hearing one way and looking another. See, if I had my notes, this is where I would be good. I'd be zipping through. So there are many different shapes, many different dog shapes. This filbert shaped ear, that's a Bedlington Terrier. It's the only dog that has that ear shape. I don't know why, but there you are. So these pointy ear dogs, they're going to hear better. The floppy ear dogs, not as well. Still better than humans, but just not quite as well. But to understand how dogs process sound and how we process sound, you've got to know a little bit about sound. So sound is waves that come into our ears, and we process it by what the frequency or the pitch of the sound is and how loud the sound is. Frequency is measured in hertz. I don't know if this will read very well, but and on the high end for humans, we can hear about 20,000 hertz. A dog on the high end can hear at least 60,000 hertz. The dogs with the pointy ears may hear all the way up to 75,000 hertz. So at 20,000 hertz, we're done. We can't hear anything higher than that. But dogs are hearing well into that. It's widely said that dogs can hear 4 times as far away as we can. I've heard it like for years, but is that actually true? We're going to come back to that. That's a little tease. So, so dogs seem to hear best at about 4,000 hertz. Our human voices typically range between about 1,000 hertz and 4,000 hertz. So all of my students out there, when I tell you to use your high yippy voice so that you can connect with a dog, I'm not making that up. They hear best at 4,000 hertz, and our high end of speaking is 4,000 hertz. So there's some math, it's real. As we get older, we lose some hearing. Dogs do too. We typically go down to about 12,000 hertz. I couldn't find any information on what dogs go down to. So I don't know whether I just couldn't find it or there's not data on it. But anyway, you really, cats. I want to tell you all about cats. So dogs hear those high frequencies because when they're hunting, they often hunt rodents. Cats really hunt a lot of rodents. So cats can hear at frequencies 5,000 to 10,000 times even higher than dogs. So they can hear all those little squeaky mice. But it's not, even though frequency is how we are able to hear a sound, what we hear depends a lot, is absolutely connected with the loudness of a sound. So where dogs can hear high sounds at lower volumes, we can hear low sounds at higher volumes. We have our low end of our frequency scale is about 20 hertz, and dogs are about 40. So we hear a little better at the really low tones. In the 125 to 500 tone range, we can hear about the same at the same level of volume. But 85 hertz is too loud it's dangerous for either of us. loud dogs barking, big loud dogs barking, bark at about 80 to 90 hertz, just to give you an idea of how loud that is. How loud we interpret it to be, though, is going to be really individual. What's really loud to me may not seem really loud to you. Things that hurt my ears may not hurt yours. I have a very low threshold for barking. And when my neighbor's dogs are barking, it makes me crazy. But they can tune it out. It doesn't bother them. So going back to that, do dogs actually hear 4 times farther than us? Yes, in some frequencies. So if in a high frequency, yeah, they probably absolutely hear way farther away than we do. Here's Jet again with his big ears. Since COVID, I have been working from home. This is my house. I typically work in my office, but I've been working from home. And so, like many of you, I have been spending more time with my dogs. And a couple of months ago, I realized that Jet, he would just erupt in barking. And I was like, what is it? And 3 seconds later, a siren would come by. And I was like, that's interesting. So I started taking note of that. And son of a gun, he would erupt in barking and be like 1001, 1002, 1003, wee! And then he would keep barking after it was gone. So I was like, oh, he barks at sirens. Then I noticed that, you know what? There's a siren and he's not barking. Dogs can discriminate tones to a much finer degree than we can. We usually hear in half tones. Dogs are somewhere in like a third to an eighth of a tone. So what I think is happening is that there are some sirens that I can't discern one from the other, but there are some sirens that really bother his ears and others that don't. I was talking with his breeder, Suzanne Clothier.
The new station alert has arrived.
Oh, shut up about the station alert. I was talking with Suzanne today and I was telling her about Jet, and she said she had a client whose dog really, really hated Harleys, but was totally fine with Honda motorcycles. So there are those little differences in tone can be really important to a dog, whereas it's not so important to us, or at least we can't discern it. So the thing that we are really good with is discerning the different types of sounds of words. Dogs don't discern that so well. So when you are picking words to use with your dogs, be careful, because they can't figure that out quite as well as we can. If you want to train your dog to go in the crate and you want them to go out a gate, they might mix that up. That might be a little hard for them to figure out. So that, in a nutshell, those are the high points. They recognize their names really well. That's me saying Jet's name and Bonnie not looking quite so much, but Jet looking right away. They can even hear their names in really loud environments with a lot of people talking. So there's so many more details. These are the high points. They're the things that I think are the most important and the most interesting. Since I've really been looking at this way, I really have been looking at my dogs a whole different way, with a much deeper respect and empathy for them. And so I hope you found it interesting, and I hope that the next time you look at your dog and you go, there's nothing there, you take a moment and remember to add, that I can perceive. So that's what I got. Thank you. And Miranda, thank you so much for putting these on. What a great service to the community. I'm sorry my technical things went wonky, but I mean, I'm honest to God, it's the first time I've ever done like a PowerPoint thing. So I'm amazed that anything worked.
Well,
So
this is Margaret's first time doing a PowerPoint presentation. So huge click and treat for that. That was awesome. Congrats. We made it through. Thank you so
woo!
much for that. If y'all have questions, if you want to go ahead and put those in the chat box, we still have a little bit of time to answer some questions. And again, if you wanted to get in touch with Margaret at the Humana Trainer, what's the best way, Margaret, to get in touch with you?
Email. So email info@humanertrainer.com. It's one old big old long word. HUMANERTRAINER.
It's almost like you've said that before.
Almost like, yes. I say it really slowly on telephones because I hate when people call me and say, so call me back. My number's da 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 da. Like, okay, that was a 5-minute message. And now I have to listen to all of it to hear that phone number again.
So we've got a couple of questions for you. One, are there different human word sounds that dogs generally have trouble hearing? You mentioned rhyming words, sibilant sounds, voice tone or pitch might make a difference.
Yeah, absolutely. So anything in those lower tones, if you get really deep and low, it's going to be harder for dogs to discriminate that. The low tones are also tones that dogs typically use as what we call distance increasing signals. So if a dog growls at another dog, it's to signal stay away. So when you use those lower tones, you're also signaling the dog to stay away rather than come to you. So yeah, really low tones are ones that are harder for dogs to hear, harder for them to hear, especially if you're quiet. So you could do a high tone really, really quietly, and the dog's still going to be able to hear that. But the low tones, if you do low tones, especially low tones quietly, that's going to be really hard for them to hear.
So Bill and Susan are bringing up the new research that says dogs orient to vowels while humans orient to consonants. Any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I read that, and so I think that's been my experience, that those when I'm telling people, when we're talking about choosing a special recall word, we talk about high pitch, but I also find that vowel sounds like or puppy, any of those high pitched vowel sounds are ones that dogs seem to really respond to. And probably vowel sounds come at a little higher pitch, I'm guessing too, than consonants. Consonants will tend to be lower. But I didn't read that article in depth. I kind of skimmed and went, okay, is this going to fit into the stuff that we're talking? Because I mean, this started out, it was like a really long thing. I was like, cut. They don't want to sit there for 3 hours hearing about hertz and decibel levels, whereas I could just go way down that rabbit hole. So
yeah, there's so much. It's interesting, we have so much research on how dogs hear things and how they smell things, but there's still really interesting stuff coming out all the time. So it was cool to see that study come out just recently.
Yeah, well, just watching them and thinking about, wow, that's I mentioned that Jet had some porcupine quills in his nose a couple of weeks ago, and earlier that night we'd been walking, and all of a sudden he and Bonnie, I wish I'd had my camera out, nose flat on the ground, running full out and just clearly following a scent. And I was like, I wonder what they're smelling. Isn't it fascinating that they can have their head totally down and be running full out and they don't run into anything? There's that peripheral vision. You know, I'm like going off on all the little geeky things about the dogs. And then 11 o'clock, he's on the deck and I let him in and there's 3 porcupine quills sticking out of his nose. I'm like, well, I guess I know what y'all were smelling earlier, because that was the first time in the 20 years I've been here we've had a porcupine. So a totally
Wow.
novel scent. And like, great.
Probably not going to go after that scent again. We might have learned a lesson there.
I hope not. I hope not.
Hopefully.
He only had 3, so that leads me to believe that, you know, as soon as he made contact, he went, whoa, that's not any good. You know, he didn't keep going after and come back with his whole face full of porcupine quills. So
awesome. Well, thank you so much, Margaret. We really, really appreciate it.
thank you,
Again,
Miranda.
quick reminders for all of you that came out tonight. We'll get this posted hopefully tomorrow. We'll have the YouTube link and we'll send it out to everybody that was signed up. So you can always watch it after the fact. And we have a whole bunch of other videos from other local trainers about a variety of topics. All of them are on our website, everydogaustin.org. So you can sign up for other upcoming webinars. They're usually about every 2 weeks. Our next one is from the Canine Center about managing a multi-dog household. So that'll be really interesting in November. If you're not following us on social media, please do. If you liked what you heard, please write us a review. We would love that. And please keep coming out and let your friends know. We want people to know this will always be a free resource, all these webinars. And we want people to come learn cool things from our local trainers. So thank you all so much for being here and being a part of our Austin dog community. We appreciate you a lot. And we hope to see you in the next one.
Thank you,
again,
Miranda.
Margaret, for your
Thank you
time
for
tonight.
doing this. You're great.
You guys have a good night.
Thanks
Bye.
so much.